All right, and welcome to the 34th episode of the Online Network of Independent Learning Professionals. Today we're going to chat about conducting a road mapping session with Robert Turnage. I'm really excited about this topic because this is something that I'm definitely getting more and more into. I know Ant does a lot of road mapping sessions. We've also talked about possibly doing road mapping sessions, as that being a way to like a first meeting with the client and a way to, see if your style mesh and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to give it over to Robert in just a second. But if anybody has any questions, just like always as Robert's chatting, then feel free to put those in the chat. And we've also got a group discussion at the end. We've got a really great panel. And I know Ant will be all over the place wanting to talk the heck out of this session. So over to Robert. Let's learn a little bit about you and what you do, and we'll jump right in. Yeah.
All right. So a little bit about me. My master's degree is in e-learning. I have been an e-learning consultant. I work now I used to work for a software company where I would train their software products. Now I work for a consulting company that implements the software products that I used to train on. So, but I work for mostly large utilities companies where they buy the software and they don't know how to use it, and I get the workforce ready. So I've got a master's degree, I've got a PMP, do a lot of working with high-level consulting for large companies. I know a lot of us are working for smaller companies or different companies. My personal experience with this, the area where I can't talk to a lot of my experience is the pre-sales portion. Usually I'm working with a sales team for my consulting company, and they talk me up to the client and say, we just got to get you in the room with this guy. And then when I do my road mapping sessions, I'm usually there with the sales team, and we kind of talk through what the problems are, what the issues are, and how either an e-learning solution or some sort of workforce readiness initiative is needed. So conducting a road mapping session, I think the information that I'm going to convey will be helpful to you. Just how you get to the point where you have a road mapping session. Mine usually comes from working with the sales team. I know a lot of you are individual consultants. Getting to the point where a client is willing to listen to you might be a little different from my personal experience. I also find out, just in my experience, that when you volunteer to speak for organizations or meetings like this, professional organizations, you always have a handful of people come up after your presentation and ask you a question. And usually that's how you are establishing trust and establishing expertise before you even get to the road mapping session. So this is my way of saying, build a lot of presentations, volunteer a lot, talk with Patty about topic ideas. This is a great venue. This is a great venue for, if anything, they're recorded, they're posted on YouTube. You can share that with clients or potential clients. Okay, so we're going to talk today about conducting a road mapping session and building a shared vision with your client. What we're going to talk about is what is a road mapping session? What are the major goals? What are the outputs? When would you use one? When would you not use one? Just identifying the opportunities for road mapping sessions, knowing when a roadmap is not a great solution. Sometimes it's not what's needed for this particular client. And then just follow up after the road mapping session, what you do. Your report, establishing timeline for deliverables, reviews, payments, that sort of thing. Okay, what is a road mapping session? It is a meeting between you and your client or potential client where you define the vision for your e-learning project. It doesn't necessarily have to be an e-learning project. In some cases, the workforce change, the workforce initiative, e-learning is not a great solution for it, or not the optimal solution. That's actually to your expertise as an instructional designer. Three major goals of your session are having a plan for your project, having a tactical solution, a small picture, and then a shared vision of expectations for your project, the big picture as well. This is a way of talking about business to your business person as well as education to your development team or just to your project charter of what you're doing. Sometimes you're going to run into situations, I run into this quite a bit, where I'm talking with the training managers and I have to help them sell upwards, where they've got to approach a director and say, hey, we need all of this money for this learning initiative. And the director says, I don't understand why this is important. I'm not going to sign off on this. Helping the manager build a business case and why this is going to be effective is part of your road mapping session and can help the project, especially for large projects. And finally, the goal of the road mapping session is to establish yourself as an expert. Understanding just your general way of interacting with clients and interacting with the business is going to establish a lot of trust, just because they'll come to you with a off-the-wall problem or a curveball, and you say, oh, that's no problem. I know exactly what to do in this situation. There's just some soft skills and some intangibles that you can present in this session that just makes someone calm and trust you and believe that they're in the hands of the experts. Now, whether that's true or not, it's, nobody's business but yours, but you need to establish expertise in this. One of my old CEOs, former CEOs, said that a consultant's job is to convey absolute calm and absolute panic at the same time, meaning don't worry, I understand what to do about this, but I have a strong sense of urgency internally, but you don't need to worry about this. And that's how you have long-term relationships, is someone gets a sense that you're taking all of the business panic in on yourself and leaving them completely calm out of the situation. Okay, so what are you bringing to the session? What are you bringing to the road mapping session? You are the expert. You know this stuff backwards and forwards. You know the development platforms, you know the delivery platforms, you have user experiences. You have stories about, oh, we did this amazing e-learning initiative, or we did this implementation in a call center, and here were the results, and here's what happened as a result of our implementation. You have anecdotes, you have stories, and you know what the platforms can do and what they can't do. So if you're an expert in Articulate or Captivate or something like that, and someone's asking for location-based services, mobile apps. I just saw this article about Pokemon Go, and maybe you can build a game with this. You could potentially build a game with that if you had a bunch of developers and you had a app, those type of resources, and you can present that to them saying, yes, we can do that for X number of $1 million. Or I can use this Articulate Studio and do it for significantly less than that. And it won't necessarily match your Pokemon Go game, but it will have this type of experience. Is this what you want? And you're also bringing in your expertise with instructional design. And if you've ever heard me present, I've probably said this about 3 or 4 times, the 3 main questions with instructional design is who is being transformed, how are they being transformed, and how is success being measured? So it's audience analysis, understanding who is going to be changed from this educational experience, what the educational experience it is, and how we're measuring success. How success is measured is going to be really important to a business person or a financial person who is approving the budget, because they're looking for a return on investment. I think education is an amazing return on investment, but a lot of people in business don't see it that way. They just see this as education, training is a black hole where we throw money in and we don't see any results. That's part of the prejudice, that's part of the stigma associated with training that you're going to have to be prepared to confront. Okay, the client, they may be frustrating to you, and they may sound like they don't know what they're talking about, but they are bringing a lot of information to the session. They understand what the underlying business need is, and they know what success looks like. They know their business really well. And the client may not necessarily be able to articulate the needs of the business, but that's part of your job. I think we've all dealt with experts who are so deeply involved with their topic that they lose sight of the forest for the trees, and that's part of your job during the session, is to coax information out of them, get them to start talking about knowledge or something that will be effective for you to use. I do a lot of user stories when I conduct. So someone will talk about, and we'll go through an example of this, but someone will talk about, we need to transform our business by synergizing processes, and that makes no sense to me. But if I say, if I'm working in a call center and I come in and I get a call with this, how after this educational experience will my actions change? How will my attitude change? How will my actions change? If you're dealing with software, which is what I deal with a lot, it's a lot of measurements where it takes us 3 or 4 minutes to issue a refund. If we can reduce that to 90 seconds, then suddenly you have workforce efficiency and workforce improvement. But I don't know what they're measuring, what success looks like. That's something where the client will know, and that's part of what your job is to get out of the client. Okay. So when is a road mapping session effective? A client doesn't know. A client doesn't know or has a vague idea. A client saw a news article about Pokemon Go and says, Pokemon Go is what we need to transform our business. And they don't know, and they're just asking someone who's an expert and who not only knows effective use of technology in a workforce or technology with people, but also knows how to build that and also knows the tools of development. So your client doesn't know or has a vague idea. You need to establish your expertise, or you want to establish your expertise, and you want to establish trust and a working style. That's when ones are really effective. As I said, if I'm at an ATD meeting and I do a presentation of some sort, I always have a couple of people and who come up afterwards, ask some questions, and they're very vague, and desperate. So that's when you can answer a few simple questions, but just say, I would love to sit down with you for an hour, 2 hours, and walk through this in detail, have a road mapping session. Here's contact information. Here's or I refer them to the sales team. And in terms of charging and not charging, I usually do these in a pre-sales fashion where we are not charging the client. But I know Ant in particular says, oh, I've got this great thing we'll do a road mapping session for a set fee. And it's usually a way just to do a little pilot project with a company client, see how they work. Okay, when would one not be effective? You might have heard in my other presentation where I talk about the different roles in engaging a client. Sometimes clients want you just to be a pair of hands. They don't want an expert. They don't want your mind. They want you to just do what they're telling you to do. That's when a road mapping session is not going to be effective, because road mapping session is firing on all cylinders in your mind. This is my creative vision. This is what I bring to the table in terms of out-of-the-box solutions. And if you just want me to be a pair of hands, if you just want me to sit down and type and do things what you say in your templates, in your format, this might just be frustrating for everyone, because the client will think, your customer will think you're trying to reinvent the wheel. They have already planned this out and you're second guessing what they're doing. And so don't reinvent the wheel. If you're in that sort of situation, probably a road mapping session, a planning session is not going to be effective. It might just be frustrating. Okay, so I've been talking abstract right now. I'll talk specifically now about an example. A couple of months ago, Madeline Rotrand, who I believe is in this session, just said, I've got this idea. And I said, I would love to do a road mapping session and talk to you about your idea, just so I can use this as an example in this presentation. And her initial idea was, we're going to transform the world's understanding of nutrition, which is exciting, fun, but a little vague, and not something I could just walk through and say, just take this e-learning course and the whole world will have a transforming understanding of the world's nutrition. Okay, so when I talk about this, it's not going to just be abstract. It's going to talk about someone who actually sat through a couple of discussion planning sessions with me, and she's in the panel discussion afterwards, so I'm sure she could provide a completely different perspective than what I'm presenting. So we can ask her that afterwards. So Act 1, before the meeting, I've gotten my mission. We're going to transform nutrition. What am I going to do? I researched the topic. I researched, tried to understand everything I could about nutrition and health and fitness. Researched the business, tried to understand who is this for, why are they doing this, and then established just the logistics of the meeting. And in this case, our first meeting was over Skype. She's in a different time zone, and she's a morning person, so I scheduled this in the morning over Skype. And then brainstorm ideas. I like coming with 2 or 3 different ideas to a meeting, because normally what happens is I say, this is what I had envisioned, this is my idea, and they're like, no, we can't do that, or we don't have the infrastructure to support that, which is absolutely fine. I've got another one right behind you. And if they don't like one, which is fine, I have another one. And then we start, after going through three strikes, then you start talking about the resistance. So what exactly am I saying or doing that's not meeting your business needs? Anyway, these are all things you have to think about before the meeting. If you're doing it over the phone, if you're doing it over Skype, if you're doing it face to face, show up on the client side and dress appropriately. And by that I just mean don't make your clothes a distraction. So if you're someone like me who likes drawing a lot, try to be in a room with a lot of whiteboards if you're doing a face-to-face meeting. Okay, Act 2, the actual meeting, the actual road mapping session. Okay, I usually begin with asking the big question: why are we here? So why? We've had. You said you want to be in the room together. Let's be in the room together. Why are we having this discussion? And then your instructional design questions. Who are we training? What are we training them on? And how do we measure success? How do we measure success is going to be very key when you're talking to a business person, because managers and people who handle budgets try to take your abstract educational concept and transform it to money, which is, that's putting a square peg in a round hole in a lot of instances. But that's something that they have to do, because they have to say, with this $250,000 investment, we're going to save the company $2 million in operational cost. And you have to help them get to that point where they can qualify that. Okay. Your role during the meeting, you've got 3 roles actually. Your job is to be an archaeologist, an anthropologist, and a paleontologist. So this shows my liberal arts background, and I'll go into more of these in detail. But the secret to performing all of these is to listen to your client, or your potential client. Just listen in the conversation to not just what's being said, but what's not being said, and read body language, read all sorts of things in the session to decide whether you want to continue this business relationship or not, or what's the real underlying problem, what's the best solution. Okay. As an archaeologist, you're searching for and discovering information. You're trying to find out what the issue is. You ask a lot of open-ended questions, you gather information, use your expertise to find the bodies. So it's not just the topic that you're discussing, but it's the why and the wherefore. What's stressing out the customer the most, and how can education help this? How can your expertise help this issue? You're also an anthropologist. You need to learn as much about the culture as possible to determine the most effective solution. And this is key to just building an ongoing relationship. If you're going to have any sort of long-term investment in this client, in this organization, you have to click with them on a gut level, an emotional level, as well as a business level. How do you feel about this culture? Do you think you would succeed in this environment? Is this going to be a story that you'll be able to tell later on and say, and we were successful? Some clients, I've seen this in some of our discussions, the organization is functioning or dysfunctional in a sense that education is not going to help. It's going to make the problem worse. If you have departments that are arguing with each other and they decide to implement a SharePoint site together, the SharePoint site might be a complete disaster, because all it's going to do is reflect the organization conflict. It's not going to solve the problem. And as an expert, you can understand this, but this is also where understanding the culture can determine what the best outcome is that you're going to be presenting at the end of your road mapping session. I know just from my experience, I am a techie. I am a database guy, software person. I have some of my that were successful, but least successful, or just in terms of clicking with the client, have been for food service industries. I've done some work for Raising Cane's Chicken. I've done some work for Pizza Hut. And those have been fine, but I didn't get that extra awesomeness that I normally get from software implementations. Understanding that, if I have a referral or I have a meeting that's reminding me that, okay, this is not where I can do my best work, that's where having a network of fellow people comes in really handy. Is like, okay, I might not be the best person for this, but maybe the best thing I can do for this client is refer them to someone else. Now, if a client is just completely dysfunctional, and I think I've said this before, if you just walk in and you smell a lot of crazy, what you can do is name the resistance and say, the best thing I can do in this relationship is not continue the relationship, but just say, you're going to have a real hard time staffing this position, and here's some recommendations that I would, here's some things I would do to recommend if you want a freelancer, if you want this contract position to be filled. You might have to look at more money, or you might have to look at investment in other areas of your business, and you can couch that nicely, as opposed to just saying, well, your soft skills made me crazy and I can't work here. So, but that's another part of this experience, is evaluating your client, understanding if this is going to be a good fit. And this is knowing your strengths and weaknesses as well as what you're perceiving from your client. Okay. Last thing is paleontologists. When this ties in with the archaeology, you're going to get little pieces of information and fragments. There's no way you're going to know everything in a 1 hour, 2 hour session. You're going to get a lot of pieces. And a paleontologist, their job is to take a bone fragment and build a skeleton. And that's what you're going to do, is you are going to I get an idea of, this is the skeleton of the project that I'm proposing. Here is the solution that I'm proposing. And I just have these little bits and pieces out of it. You listen and you understand the bits and pieces, and then you assemble them into a project skeleton, a project plan, a project charter. Okay, so let's go back to our example. This was a Skype meeting that I had with Madeline, where we were talking about nutrition. And I just said, nutrition is vague. We need to drill down. What do you want people to do at the end of the session? And so she said, I wanted to understand nutritional principles and use them to build a smoothie. Okay, that's awesome. I can work with that. And then we start talking about, I want to build a custom smoothie based on nutritional principles. That's great. We can do that as a quiz, build a smoothie app. Who is going to be trained, and let's go through our checklist. And how are we going to measure success? So it turns out that Madeline was working with a gym, a health club, and they had a smoothie stand in their health club, and they had a nutritional educational program already, and she was talking about digitizing that. Understanding this completely transformed the solution that I proposed. So as opposed to a traditional e-learning, an e-learning project where you're clicking next slide, please, next slide, please, next slide, please. I said, let's do videos. Let's do videos with a soundtrack that people can, while they're on a treadmill, plug in their phone and listen to a little lecture about smoothies, a lecture about nutrition, and do it that way, as opposed to focusing on interactivity. Let's focus on high emotion content. You've got a music bed, sound score. You've got simple graphics that'll play. And it's all going to be mobile app-based, phone-based. And then at the end of that, they have the Build a Smoothie app, where they can drag and drop different items in their smoothie. And then this would be not necessarily from the initial version of the app, but maybe for later iterations, seeing if the first version is successful, if there's a lot of adoption of that. We could tie it in with smoothie sales, with the store, where you could build a custom smoothie, or you could have pre-built smoothies in your app that you could then present to the store and say, I want this. I built this peanut butter smoothie, or I built this this raspberry blueberry smoothie. Can you build this? Can you serve me this after my workout? So the idea would be a user comes in, it says, I want to do a 20-minute exercise. They've got a 20-minute lecture with music and graphics that they use to time their workout. And at the end of the workout, they type up a smoothie and show it on the way out, and that's what they get. So now we're taking something that's, as opposed to a traditional e-learning PowerPoint presentation that someone clicks through, it's now something that's actively part of the user experience. It's something that makes people want to come to the gym, makes people want to exercise, and ties in directly with the entire customer experience. So starting with that, that's kind of the idea. And then what I do, I'm a drawer, and that really helps a lot, but I like visualizing as much as possible during this. I try to get as concrete as possible during this as part of the shared vision, right? So if I'm in a face-to-face meeting, I have to have whiteboards or some sort of drawing area. If not, you can walk in with a tablet and use a stylus to draw on your tablet, or pen and paper always works well. So use a whiteboard, use pictures, use concrete examples, user experience stories are something that I use a lot. And that's what I used with what I was working with Madeline, which was, I am someone who comes in and, I am someone who comes into your health club and wants to work out. How can I learn something while I'm working out? And that drove a lot of the design. Okay. Move from abstract concepts to actionable behavior. Link actionable behavior as close to business results as much as possible. And this is where you start tying in things to the value of your e-learning solution with the business solution. So in this case, what we said was, implementation of this app should help drive smoothie sales or higher customer satisfaction, and suddenly the owner of the gym has a better idea of, oh yeah, I can invest in this app, and it will be an investment in my business and the entire customer experience. User narratives, create those as much as possible. I come to the gym and I'm about to work out. I see a sign that reminds me about the nutrition class or this app. I listen to this while I'm on the treadmill. So having said that, if you have trouble visualizing or you're not necessarily a visual thinker, there's a book called Back of the Napkin by Dan Rome. It is a great book for learning about visual communication and taxonomy. You don't have to be an artist, but he does a lot of, if this is a process, use these graphics. If this is a user narrative, begin with this. You draw a little stick man saying, this is me, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to be transformed. I would recommend looking at that book, reading that book. Okay, so after you have sketched out everything and talked through this and gone back and forth with your customer, walk through your vision. And this is very much where I started talking about the app. Excuse me, where I said this is not going to be something you log in on the computer. It's going to be phone-based. It's going to be low interactivity but high emotion, high audio. We're going to have exciting music beds that make you want to work out. These are things that are going to be involved with motion. It's going to be up-tempo, upbeat. It's going to be visual, but it's not going to be busy because people are going to be multitasking when doing this. We're going to do animation, not photorealistic. We're going to do icons. We're going to do a lot of something that can be very recognizable on a phone, not necessarily photorealistic, because that will distract people from their exercise. Graphic emoji style icons showing common symptoms of poor nutrition, the frowny face, maybe some different colors. If we wanted to do color coding or branding, we could color them. What we had talked about was having different types of elements within your smoothie, your base, your protein, all of these things, be different colors, and you would be assembling the different colors in different ways. And let's say if we're doing a lecture on protein and the color associated with protein is orange, you can learn about protein by reading the orange course and all of the graphics, and that would be orange based. But then when you move towards your liquid base could be a different color. It could be green, and everything would be green. And that way, when you're assembling your smoothie at the end, that would be your assessment, your test, is all of the different elements would be color-coded as you build it. And then you could think of outside of your e-learning solution, other supports, color-coded posters around your smoothie bar, where that would be aligned with the colors in the app, so that they can just say, I really like, on my app, I really like the red smoothies I build. There's a red menu, I'll just order off of that. Or there's a green menu, I'll just order off of that. Or recipe cards, or just PDFs that people can use to, if they wanted to build something at home, or if they wanted to print out something. Okay. While you're doing this, you also collect feedback, listen to concerns, and there will always be one of three topics that come up repeatedly when someone posts resistance to your idea. They're going to say, is time going to be the issue? Is money going to be the issue? Or is quality going to be the issue? This is going to be invaluable when you're coming up with your plan B. When they say, oh, we love the smoothie app idea, but I'm just afraid it's going to cost too much. And you say, here's what we can do. I can build something in Articulate or Captivate, put that on your mobile device as a pilot. You can test that out, see what you like, and then for phase 2, we can reevaluate and build onto that. We can have an iterative solution where I do something cheap and simple at the beginning, and then we can enhance it and do it more often. Don't be afraid of silence. The session is to think and listen and to work collaboratively, not to push something prefabricated. Sometimes the clients don't necessarily know what they want, and when you present something, they have to think about it. And if they have to stop and think about it, and you just start talking over them, it doesn't help. Don't be afraid of silence. Sometimes there'll just be a lot of sitting and thinking and mulling this over. Yeah, get comfortable with that. And then offer alternatives. We can use clip art instead of hiring a graphic designer to save money and time. There are other approaches. If money is an issue, you always have 2 or 3 different approaches to a particular issue. Okay, manage conflict. You're going to be tested. Sometimes potential customers use these sessions as ways of challenging you, or seeing how you behave in stress or in conflict situations. That's fine. This is part of your discovery. This is your first date. You are not in a committed relationship at this point. You can back out anytime. So just keep in mind that whatever they're doing, their intentions are good. In their mind, they're doing the right thing. And that always helps in conflict situations, because it doesn't seem, it may seem personal. It's not personal. They're doing their job. So if they're behaving in an aggressive manner, they're doing so because they think they're right. So what you do is you listen, you mediate, you adjust, and this is where you reflect back. Sometimes what you're getting, you're like, okay, I hear a lot of anxiety, I hear a lot of anger. Can we explore this? Can we talk about this? You name the resistance. Don't be afraid to name the resistance and say, I'm not sensing that you're very excited about this. Can we talk about why? And sit in silence and wait for them to respond. And really remember, if you smell crazy, feel free to end the relationship before it begins. And that can either be, I've learned a lot about your company, and my schedule's pretty booked right now, but I have many associates who are willing to take this. Or, I really don't think e-learning solutions can be the best for you. What we can do is your organization needs to mature in these ways, or couch it nicely. But just say that this may not be the best solution to what the real problem is. If you have you're doing a course on sexual harassment and the CEO is the worst offender, any education is not going to change that organization. And all you can do is say something like that, is that I get a real strong sense that any educational effort is going to be undermined by management. There you go. Just present it that way. And that's a nice way of putting it that doesn't make them hostile or defensive. Just explain to them in business terms what your perception of the real problem is. Okay, you wrap up. At the end of the session, start documenting everything. What I do in some of my crazier ones, I just take over the whiteboards. I just write all sorts of things, and then at the end of it, I pull up my phone, take pictures of everything. I take pictures of this. And then you start documenting a summary of this. In that, it's an email, it could be a Word document, it could be in any sort of takeaway. Just your shared vision. This is what we understand you're asking for. This is what we understand your e-learning solution is going to be. These were our discussion points, and these were our action items. My action item was to send this follow-up and give you time to put your presentation to the person who's financing this, and then I'll follow up in 5 business days with a proposed timeline, proposed budget, and then you give them their action items as well. Okay, after the meeting. So this is post-meeting. You just do a post-meeting follow-up. This is just part of your sales process, but send it as soon as possible, sometimes the same day, sometimes the next day. Send just a meeting summary to the key stakeholders. Include just a rough high-level development timeline. We said we were going to build a smoothie app. It will take us 6 months to do this, and these are the tools that we're going to use to build this, and this is how much it's going to cost. It's kind of on a high level. Send that to whoever your primary point of contact is. It may not necessarily be the decision maker, but that helps them, if they're a training manager, that helps them build a budgetary case for who's ever approving the budget. And then just leave lasting impressions, no matter what happens. If it's a disastrous meeting, if it's a good meeting, try to leave the customer with the impressions that you're the expert. You can learn quickly. You're adaptable. You're flexible and creative, and you would be a valuable asset to their professional network. This is something increasingly I see in the business community, is that even if there's conflict, they still want you to be part of their network, because sometime, maybe 2 or 3 jobs down the road, someone's going to ask them for an e-learning solution, and they need to say, oh, I know this lady who's the world's best e-learning person, or I know this guy who's the world's best e-learning person. You can get some intangibles just from having them in their network, even if that one project doesn't work out. Goodwill is priceless marketing. Try to generate as much as you can within reason. I mean, you will encounter some crazy people, I get that, but try to give out as much goodwill in the world as possible. And this is where I'll go back to my beginning point of volunteering to speak, becoming an expert, putting together presentations, and putting yourself out there. Okay, questions?
Oh, wow. Robert, I really loved how you structured this presentation of like before, during, and after. That was incredible. And yeah, so many good things.
How are we doing on time? I had almost 30 slides, and I went through them quickly.
Yeah, we're great. You know, it's 38 minutes. You know, we've got 20 minutes Q&A. That's perfect.
All right.
I'll never let you go over, so don't worry.
Okay.
I wouldn't let it where we have, and that was all. No one can discuss. Yeah, so I just wanted to really quickly, as we move into the Q&A part, mention that on the panel today we've got Madeline and then Andrew. I don't know if Lita is here. I don't see her on. But in any case, and then we also obviously have Robert, and a lot of this is something that we can all contribute to. One of the questions that we had is, you know, if you're meeting virtually, what tools do you use to draw? And I just kind of, if you want to weigh in on the chat, and then also Robert, I don't know if you do most of these meetings virtually or in person.
So I've done both in virtual meetings. Like I know in this virtual meeting, you do there's a whiteboard option. Several of the virtual clients have whiteboard options. I use those. I don't draw with my mouse. I do have a little Wacom tablet that I use that has a stylus on it that I have on my computer at home, that when I do that, I'll just draw some things on the whiteboards. In the one that I did with Madeline as an example, we didn't do any. I drew on scraps of paper, but I never really shared them with her. So the whole time we was doing the presentation, I'm doodling, but didn't share that with her. Yeah, what we can do, I mean, a lot of the virtual meetings do have whiteboard apps, but you could also, pen and paper, just hold it up to your screen and say, does this make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and then Sketchnote, it looks like there's an app for that, as there would be. And then Danny had I think it was you, Danny, had a good suggestion, which is you could use anything on your iPad and then use the reflector if you're, you know, to like show that.
Evernote has drawing tools as well. I've done that before, where I build Evernotes, just draw some things in that, and then share that Evernote with the client in a virtual environment. Yeah.
So it sounds like really just, you know, pick a couple, test them out, see what you are most comfortable with, and go from there. So, yeah. Another question that we had was, you know, do you use a standard format or template for the road mapping in product? So I saw that you have like a meeting summary. You know, are there certain like sections that you always have or things like that?
So I use some standard project management templates, just kind of. But even then, it's just, these are the key points. These are our action items, points of discussion, and summary statement. This is our conclusion that we came to after this meeting. This is my understanding of the vision of the project. And having it in writing and having it sent out a day afterwards, or a little while afterwards, gives the client time to think about it and maybe revisit, and can put it in writing. Some people are need to sleep on it before they can fully articulate. And I've run into that as well, where I say, during this meeting, we decided these three things, send out the email, and then 2 days later give it, yeah, I've been thinking about it. Maybe we need to revise this.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and then a question that I have, and this is for the panel or Robert or really anyone, what do you do when a client is having issues articulating what they need? How do you handle that? I really like Robert's suggestion of using, like a tangible scenario, which is very helpful, bringing it down to like exactly what would I do next, and then, and what would happen. But any other suggestions when the client's having trouble articulating what they need?
Okay, so I'll answer unless no one else wants to.
Well, I will do you and then Madeline.
Okay, that's great. There's a thing called expert syndrome, where you are so invested in the topic that you lose sight of the details, right? And I usually begin the conversation by saying, there's this thing called expert syndrome, where you are so deeply involved in this topic or this subject that you completely lose sight of the details or how to communicate to that. So I'm going to be really stupid for the next 5 minutes and just ask you the stupidest, most frustrating questions. And this is really a testament to your intelligence. This is the only way experts can break out of their expert syndrome, is to approach it as if they were in 3rd grade or if they were not that bright. And I use that excuse every time I do something stupid. So every time I do something stupid, I say, oh, it was expert syndrome. That's what was happening, is I was just trying to draw information out of it. Just explaining to them the process and then walking them through the process of, I'm going to pretend like I know nothing about your business or nothing about anything. Let's go through this in a very simple way. Usually you get a lot more information out of that, especially if they're so engaged in their business and their culture that they can't articulate it really well. I worked with an executive and I said, what was your job? And he just goes, I put out fires all day. And so immediately I'm like, that's not very helpful. Let's walk through a typical day. Let's open up last Tuesday on your calendar and walk me through that day, step by step, what you did that day and how, it's like, well, I got this email about this issue. Okay, why did they send you that email? What prompted this? And what did you do to solve this? And why are they coming to you? You get a lot more information that way.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, Madeline, I think you had something.
No, just to build on that exact point, Robert had mentioned using user stories, and really that was very useful for me. When we met, I had this idea in my head, like, okay, smoothie making, and I had, okay, got your liquid base, you've got your protein, you've got your add-on, like your little supplements that you put in, and kind of, I had that very much breaking it into units. And I maybe it's just being a designer that my brain immediately goes to, like, how can I present it visually? And I didn't think of all these other kind of elements. So by speaking with him, he really had me think deeper by, well, okay, let's look at this user and what are they going to use it for? And I really found that he had me kind of step away from the visual elements, and like I had already jumped to the end. And I mean, I don't know if that is the case for everyone that you speak to, because I'm coming at it from a different reference point than maybe a client who isn't actually involved at all in the development work. But nonetheless, I found that a very useful exercise. And equally, just meeting, I can see the value in road mapping because it helped us build a relationship. I mentioned, I'm glad that you didn't spell the crazy on me and decide
no.
send me away. But I found it very useful, because then after that, I felt kind of more comfortable working with Robert. It was, we met and I liked the way he worked. He gave me confidence in him. I can see the value from that perspective as well. We talked about it briefly about, charging or not charging for this type of session. Whichever your point of view, I can see the value in it from both perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that a lot of people do, jump to the end. They're like, I just need this and I need it to be, these things. And then if you start talking about it from the user's perspective, it just gives you a whole different way of thinking through something. Instead of just being information, that's right. That's one of the things you get a lot is just, I just need them to know all this stuff. And here's all the content. And it's like, okay, well, what are they going to do with all of this? Like, how can you tell that this person knows and this person doesn't? And that kind of brings me to a question of, the action mapping session. Has anyone ever do, action mapping as a session? That's something I used to do a lot of, and I haven't been doing it as much recently, but not so much out there. Yeah. So, I mean, that one is something that used to be really helpful for me whenever I was at Chipotle and trying to get subject matter experts, like trying to pull out of them exactly like, what do we need people to do? And now we're going to design some activities around that. And then, and then also that other thing is that helps with is the amount of information, the sheer amount of information that people want you to include in e-learning. The action mapping process definitely helps me to be able to say, okay, well, this information here is actually not going to help them do these things. So we're going to put that in job aid, but let's focus on what's going to help them do the things. And we could even teach them to go use the job aid. It's like one of the projects I worked on was P-card, like a purchase card. The company, people were just using it for random things, their company purchase card and stuff that they definitely shouldn't be. So, it's like, well, we need them to be within policy. Okay, well, so then I just created like, okay, we literally are taking a trip. And so the entire course is like, you're going to be going to, Las Vegas. You're going to be meeting with these group of people. And literally from the minute that you book your trip, you actually book it online. You go get your gas. You get to the airport, all of that. So that was really helpful. Instead of just saying, here's the P-card policy and everything that you need to know within it. Yeah, it actually ended up kind of fun.
I'd want to take it. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well, and it also is so incredible when you work with graphic designers. I'm not a graphic designer. And so, like one of the things that I was really struggling with was like graphically, what are we going to show on screen? So there was a part where, we have to show them, there are certain people that have like gas cards and we had to show them, using that. And the graphic designer literally went to a gas station and just like took a picture. And so I was like, oh, what? You can do that? I didn't even think of that. So making it very realistic. What other questions do you guys have about road mapping sessions? And while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to do a quick poll. How many of you actually do road mapping sessions? So I'll say A, always, B, sometimes, C, never. You're usually just like a pair of hands. So just interesting to see. Yeah, a lot of sometimes and always. All right, so any other questions about road mapping sessions? Andrew or Madeline, do you have any other thoughts or comments before we jump off here in about 10 minutes?
I'm pretty good as far as questions, yeah. Excellent presentation, Robert.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I will say the work took me to Quebec a couple of weeks ago, so Madeline and I had a chance to meet face to face, and the first thing she said to me was, "You're taller in real life." So I'm taller in real life, everyone.
Good to know. And we were talking about it, you might have missed, but we loved your pictures from the presentation. These were so fun.
Oh, good. I try to find something that's evocative. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things I really liked in the presentation, I think sometimes when I'm getting ready to go into a road mapping session, I think, my God, I have to figure out everything and I have to know all this stuff. And what I like about the archaeology example is that you're really going to uncover, one thing at a time. You're not going to have the full skeleton right away.
Right.
And I think coming up with a list of questions that, you know, that you expand upon and ask the appropriate questions. I mean, you can always come back later and say, you know, okay, let's expand on this area, or let's expand on this area. But, you know, asking the right questions up front definitely gives you a good general picture.
And it's very collaborative. It wasn't like, I didn't get the feeling that he had prepared all of these questions, you know, and so it was like, okay, now you said this, let's go to question 2D. I mean, definitely he came prepared. I could tell he had looked up my topic a bit, which made, you know, gave me confidence, but at the same time, it wasn't an artificial meeting where he was like talking at me. I very much felt that it was, in some ways, I was leading the session and he was just having me reflect deeper. And in the end, that I think that gives the client much more confidence in you.
Yeah. Listening is much more important than talking.
And
yeah.
A lot of what you were saying in the presentation goes back to what we're actually, just because segues, what we're going to be talking about in the book club that Blair was saying was basically pitching with winning it out with pitching. And a lot of that goes for road mapping and, you know, sit down, listen, present yourself as the expert. Sometimes you have to divorce a client before you start, you know, things like that. And so it's kind of interesting to hear that put into something very solid and concrete. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. So in our Skype session that Madeline and I did, it was really funny because I had a cold at the time. So I am hacking and coughing all the way through it while we're talking about health and nutrition. And so I'm like, I care a lot about health and nutrition and, you know. Was worried that made a poor impression, but I'm glad it did not. So
Ironic.
Very ironic, yes. I apologize about 2 or 3 times.
Oh, goodness. Well, unless there's any other questions, then we're actually going to get out a couple minutes early. But I just wanted to say to Robert, thank you so much. I know it takes time to create that. That was a wonderful presentation. You broke it up incredibly, and such good advice, even just for life. You know, don't be afraid of the silence. Just a normal conversation and all of that. So thank you, chat love, or clap for Robert. We so appreciate your time.
So I will put this presentation up in Slack.
Okay, that's perfect. And then we'll have the recorded session up later if anyone wants to go back through it. I have put in the chat, the Win Without Pitching book club is up next. So the next top of the hour, an Ant will be in there. So the link is in the chat. Feel free to jump in if you want to discuss the Win Without Pitching book. Otherwise, we'll see everyone next week, same time, same place. Have a wonderful week.
Okay. Bye. Thanks.
See ya.